Steve has a Charley horse.
Huh?
A Charley horse is defined in Merriam-Webster as a muscular pain, cramping, or stiffening, especially of the quadriceps, that results from a bruise or strain. Why? What equine circumstance could have possibly given us this phrase? To answer that question, we need to go back to 1880s Chicago, to an intersection where many great stories begin: gambling and baseball. Meet the protagonist of our story, Joe Quest. Joseph L. Quest was born in 1852 in Newcastle, Pennsylvania. 30 years later, he was employed as the backup second baseman for the Chicago White Stockings. Joe must have been a nice guy because he wasn't very good at baseball. Joe stood at 5'6", 150 pounds, and his career OPS plus sits at 67, which means he was 33% worse at hitting than the average Joe during his career. On the field, he committed 425 errors over 598 games with a fielding percentage under 90. Joe is what we would call today a zero-tool player. Looping back to Charley Horse, there's a few accounts of how this phrase came about, the most popular of which is attributed to Scottish infielder Hugh Nicol, who was a teammate of Quest in 1881 and 82. In 1906, he was coaching the Purdue baseball team when he decided to share the origin of the phrase with the Chicago Tribune. For veracity's sake, this exact source was cited by Bill James in the new Bill James Historical Baseball Abstract. The newspaper clipping is in the description for your own reading. As the story goes, the White Stockings had an off day and got permission to head down to the races. Nicol described that the tip had gone out the night before that a horse named Charley was the sure winner of that afternoon. The tip was touted as a cinch. It simply couldn't lose, and we all got on. The lone holdout was Joe Quest, who refused to place a bet. The race began, and Charley the horse shot out to a huge lead early, and of course they all started ribbing and physically jostling Quest. Nicol even mentioned that King Kelly gave Quest a caning over the head. Our sweet horse Charley held a sizable lead until, in the last turn, Charley stumbled, went lame in his right leg, and the field closed up. As the first horse passed Charley, Joe Quest shouted the fateful words, "Look at your old Charley horse now."
Say that again?
That probably would have been the end of it, but the baseball gods had something to add. The next day, they were playing the Buffalo Bisons, with an S, and Joe Quest was the third base coach. As Nicol mentions, Joe was always a good coacher. Center fielder George Gore ripped a single, and Quest immediately signaled for a steal. Gore took off and was about halfway to second. He stepped into a pocket and sprung a strain, just as the racing pony had done before. Gore was hosed, and Joe Quest exclaimed, "That's your old Charley horse. He'd made it all right if it hadn't been for that old Charley horse," officially cementing Charley horse as a term for a specific kind of leg cramp. It's now just a general term for cramping anywhere on the body. As for Quest, in 1907, it was reported in the Sporting News that Little Joe was down on a plantation in Georgia dying of consumption. Either this wasn't true or was horribly misinformed, because while he would eventually pass, it would be at the age of 71 in 1924 with his family in San Diego. This is the legacy of Joe Quest. Next time you get a tad dehydrated and lose the ability to walk for a few minutes, or wake up in a sweat writhing in pain, think of Joe. He's smiling down on you somewhere.
Oh, Charley Horse! Charley Horse!